minutes south latitude. The day following was a halt. The doctor's feet were so inflamed and sore that he could not bear his shoes on. My heels were also raw, and I viciously cut large circles out of my shoes to enable me to move about. Having converted my zinc canteens into bullets, and provided myself with a butcher and a gun bearer, I set out for the lovely park land and plain west of Mpokwa stream, with the laudable resolution to obtain something, and seeing nothing in the plain, I crossed over a ridge, and came to a broad basin covered with tall grass, with clumps here and there of fefene palm, with a stray mimosa or so scattered about. Nibbling off the branches of the latter, I saw a group of giraffes, and then began stalking them through the grass, taking advantage of the tall grass-grown ant hills that I might approach the wary beasts before their great eyes could discover me. I contrived to come within 175 yards, by means of one of these curious hummocks, but beyond it no man could crawl without being observed. The grass was so thin and short. I took a long breath, wiped my perspiring brow, and sat down for a while. My black assistants also, like myself, were almost breathless with the exertion, and the high expectations roused by the near presence of the royal beasts. I toyed lovingly with the heavy Riley, saw to my cartridges, and then stood up and turned, with my rifle ready, took one good long steady aim, then lowered it again to arrange the sights, lifted it up once more, dropped it. A giraffe half turned his body, for the last time I lifted it, took one quick sight at the region of the heart, and fired. He staggered, reeled, and then made a short gallop, but the blood was spouting from the wound in a thick stream, and before he had gone 200 yards he came to a dead halt, with his ears drawn back, and allowed me to come within 20 yards of him, when, receiving a zinc bullet through the head, he fell dead. "Allahu Akbar!" cried Khamisi, my butcher, fervently. "This is meat, master." I was rather saddened than otherwise at seeing the noble animal stretched before me. If I could have given him back his life I think I should have done so. I thought it a great pity that such splendid animals, so well adapted for the service of man in Africa, could not be converted to some other use than that of food. Horses, mules, and donkeys died in these sickly regions, but what a blessing for Africa would it be if we could tame the giraffes and zebras for the use of explorers and traders. Mounted on a zebra, a man would be enabled to reach Ujiji in 1 month from Bagamoyo, whereas it took me over 7 months to travel that distance. The dead giraffe measured 16 feet 9 inches from his right forehoof to the top of his head, and was one of the largest size, though some have been found to measure over 17 feet. He was spotted all over with large black, nearly round patches. I left Khamisi in charge of the dead beast, while I returned to camp to send off the men to cut it up, and convey the meat to our village. But Khamisi climbed a tree for fear of the lions, and the vultures settled on it, so that when the men arrived on the spot, the eyes, the tongue, and a great part of the posteriors were eaten up. What remained weighed as followed when brought in and hung to the scales: one hind leg, 134 pounds; one hind leg, 136 pounds; one foreleg, 160 pounds; one foreleg, 160 pounds; ribs, 158 pounds; neck, 74 pounds; rump, 87 pounds; breast, 46 pounds; liver, 20 pounds; lungs, 12 pounds; heart, 6 pounds. Total weight of edible portions, 993 pounds. Skin and head, 181 pounds. The 3 days that followed I suffered from a severe attack of fever, and was unable to stir from bed. I applied my usual remedies for it, which consisted of colocynth and quinine, but experience has shown me that an excessive use of the same cathartic weakens its effect, and that it would be well for travellers to take with them different medicines to cause proper action in the liver, such as colocynth, calomel, resin of jalap, Epsom salts, and that no quinine should be taken until such medicines shall have prepared the system for its reception. The doctor's prescription for fever consists of 3 grains of resin of jalap and 2 grains of calomel, with tincture of cardamoms put in just enough to prevent irritation of the stomach, made into the form of a pill, which is to be taken as soon as one begins to feel the excessive languor and weariness which is the sure forerunner of the African type of fever. An hour or 2 later a cup of coffee, unsugared and without milk, ought to be taken, to cause a quicker action. The doctor also thinks that quinine should be taken with the pill, but but my experience, though it weighs nothing compared against what he has endured, has proved to me that quinine is useless until after the medicine has taken effect. My stomach could never bear quinine unless subsequent to the cathartic. A well-known missionary at Constantinople recommends travellers to take 3 grains of tartar emetic for the injection of the bilious matter in the stomach, but the Reverend Doctor possibly forgets that much more of the system is disorganized than the stomach, and, though in 1 or 2 cases of a slight attack this remedy may have proved successful, it is altogether too violent for an enfeebled man in Africa. I have treated myself faithfully after this method 3 or 4 times, but I could not conscientiously recommend it. For cases of urticaria, I could recommend taking 3 grains of tartar emetic, but then a stomach pump would answer the purpose as well. On the 27th we set out for Misonghi. About half-way I saw the head of the expedition on the run, and the motive seemed to be to communicate quickly, man after man, to those behind, until my donkey commenced to kick, and lash behind with its heels. In a second I was made aware of the cause of this excitement, by a cloud of wild bees buzzing about my head, 3 or 4 of which settled on my face, and stung me frightfully. We raced madly for about half a mile, behaving in as wild a manner as the poor bestung animals. As this was an unusually long march, I doubted if the doctor could march it, because his feet were so sore, so I determined to send 4 men back with the kitanda, but the stout old hero refused to be carried, and walked all the way to camp after a march of 18 miles. He had been stung dreadfully in the head and in the face, the bees had settled in handfuls in his hair, but after partaking of a cup of warm tea and some food, he was as cheerful as if he had never travelled a mile. At Mrera, central Ukonongo, we halted a day to grind grain, and to prepare the provision we should need during the transit of the wilderness between Mrera and Manyara. End of chapter 14, part 3.